I came just a couple of days after, but you got to meet the Holy Father, Pope Leo, this time as well, right? That was really exciting because I know there were some social media posts about it, and people have been really excited to see that.
Yeah, so. It was amazing.
Yeah,
it was an amazing experience. You know, it was a first for me. You know, I've been a bishop for 20 years now, and I should say I've never had a private audience with the Holy Father. I did. Pope Benedict the 16th gave me a little private audience for about 15 minutes in the Vatican Gardens of all places. But it was about a year or so after his resignation from office. So Pope Francis was already in full force at that time, and Pope Benedict had been retired, I guess you say, emeritus, for about a year, and he did grant me a little private audience for 15 minutes, but you know, what can you talk? A little small talk for 15 minutes. Yeah. I just wanted to thank Pope Benedict because he had made me a bishop in Michigan, and he sent me here, and 3 weeks after he sent me here, announced sending me here, you know, he resigned office. But this to spend time with the sitting Pope, with the sitting Holy Father, the successor to St. Peter, was an amazing experience for me. Father Randy, my secretary, timed it. The audience, he gave me 35 minutes. You know,
that's good. I think Father Randy said it might have been about 38.
Oh, 38. No, well,
like
let's push it to 38. Let's make it sound like it was more than.
I have to admit, I was a little jealous because I arrived 2 days after, so you and Father Randy got to meet him. But and some of our seminarians have met him, and I haven't even.
Yeah, and you haven't. Yeah, no. That was one of the. Well, it was also largely through the efforts of Father Randy that helped set this up. But it was very nice that Father Randy got to go in at the beginning of the audience and to greet the Holy Father, have our pictures taken. We presented our Holy Father with a couple of gifts, and then Father Randy was
a Pendleton blanket.
Yeah, we gave the Holy Father a framed 4 photographs framed in a little collage. Because we celebrated, that the weekend after that audience, the centennial of the dedication of our cathedral. So we had on the top 2 photos were a couple of historical photos of the interior and exterior of the cathedral, and then in the lower panel we had pictures from our Eucharistic procession last year at Corpus Christi.
I heard he liked that part in particular.
You know, we had roughly 3,000 people march through the streets of Portland on Corpus Christi last year. So we had some photograph of that, and then a benediction on the steps of the cathedral. So just a little then and now with regard to the cathedral. But we are presented with a Pendleton blanket, something uniquely Oregon. Cool. Of course, as an American himself, that might be lost on a European pope or a South American pope, but on an American pope, everybody knows Pendleton, right?
Yeah, that's
I did not tell him that Pendleton is in the other diocese, the Diocese of Baker,
that's
but
okay.
little details.
Exactly.
It was so then after that, Father Randy was then escorted out of the room, and it's funny because you don't know how these things happen. So because I've seen pictures of people, meeting with the Pope, and you see the person he's meeting with sitting at the desk, and the Pope is across the desk. Yeah. But you presume, there's like other people around somewhere, that. But no, we had the official photos taken. Everybody left except the photographer. I sat down in the chair across from the Holy Father. The photographer snapped a couple of photos of that, and then out the door he went. Wow. So it's just literally the whole time, just one-on-one, with the Holy Father, nobody else in the room. It was an amazing experience for me. Again, like one I've never had, even 20 years as a bishop. I've had audiences with the Pope. But they were always in a group. We had the Ad Limina audiences, so I had an Ad Limina visit. The Ad Limina visit, for those of you who don't know, it's supposed to be every 5 years, but it turns out to be about every 8 years. All the bishops of the world have to go to Rome to go to the threshold, Ad Limina, to the threshold of the apostles, meet with the various offices in the Vatican, but you also get an audience with the Holy Father. But it's as a group.
Yeah, I got to be with you on the last one.
Yeah, that's right.
You
got to go in and
so that was really cool.
Yeah. So you got to greet Pope Francis and that. So I had one of those, Ad Limina audiences with other bishops, with Pope Benedict in 2012, and then with Pope Francis in 2020. But this is just like you and the Pope. And
can I ask what your impression was like?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I was nervous at first.
Oh, sure.
Well, I mean, you're in a room by yourself with the Pope, and you're sitting across the desk from him, and that's the successor to St.
See, that's
Peter.
what I said. That's how I feel when I get to talk to you.
Right. I don't believe that for 1 second.
Well, I promise obedience to you. So,
right.
You got to make me shake in my boots a little bit.
Now you're just schmoozing. And the interesting thing, too, is we had Mass that morning.
Oh, yeah.
In what they call the Clementine Chapel. The Clementine Chapel. So it's the chapel at the very tomb of St.
Awesome.
Peter.
Tiny.
It's most tour groups or groups will have Mass down in the crypt of the basilica, and you can kind of look over and see the tomb of Peter. But this is like the chapel right at the tomb. The altar butts up literally against the
and it's
monument.
Tiny. I don't think people realize how tiny
No,
it
it's
is.
very, very
Just
tiny.
all gold and tiny. Yeah.
And so, again, Father Randy had arranged for that Mass there. And we would have taken Mass there any day of that week, and we happened to get that morning. But it was so amazing that here I am in the morning with our seminarians and Father Randy. We're celebrating Mass literally at the very tomb of St. Peter, where the bones of St. Peter are. And then later that morning, I'm meeting with Peter's successor in his private library in the Apostolic Palace.
Wow.
And so at first, I was nervous, and I mean, you're talking to the Pope, but I would say as the conversation went on, I mean, yes, I'm talking to the successor to St. Peter, the vicar of Christ, but I'm also talking to a fellow American.
Yeah, that's
and
awesome.
So there was an ease in the conversation that I found kind of calming for me. And, when I've spoken and had brief little exchanges with, I got to meet St. John Paul II as a priest. I had, more substantive conversations with Pope Benedict and some with Pope Francis as well. But there's always the language is because English is a second language to them, and of course I spoke to Pope Francis in Italian because he didn't speak English. But you're talking to a Chicagoan, and having lived in the Midwest for 35 years myself, and he knew where the Upper Peninsula of Michigan was.
Yeah.
When I told him I had been bishop there before I came to Portland, and so as the conversation went on, I just relaxed. It was like I could use turns of phrase, idioms, expressions that you wouldn't use with somebody who doesn't understand how we talk in America, right?
Yeah.
So it was just an incredible time and exchange to have with him.
And I think Father Randy said that you had commented that he was just a really great listener.
Oh,
yeah.
I had heard this about him from several, that he's a very good listener, and I found that to be absolutely true. I mean, I can't imagine what, being the Pope, right? And you look at his schedule every day, and he has these little private audiences, throughout the day, mostly in the morning. And, you think, oh my gosh, this poor man sits there in that chair all morning with different people coming in to talk to him. You'd think after a while, it'd be like, okay, I'm just going to sit here and politely let this guy talk, right? I found him, but I've been told he's a good listener. I found him very attentive to what I was saying. And I never got an impression during the audience that he was disengaged or would just as soon have this over with, He really listened. And I started off by saying, again, that's something I probably would not have said to somebody who wasn't an American. I said, Holy Father, I got to be honest with you. I don't know how this is supposed to work.
Yeah.
Because we asked for the audience. I didn't think it was going to happen, so I wasn't really worried about what am I going to say to him. But once the audience was granted, it was like, oh, well, that's great, but now what do I say to him?
I think you told me like the night before you woke up, right? Because you get some jet lag. And then if you have a thought in your mind, you're never
I
going
woke
back
up
to
at
bed.
3 a.m, with the jet lag thing, and I normally I probably would have been able to eventually get back to sleep, but I started envisioning the audience, and it was going through my head.
Yeah.
so I just said, I don't know how this is supposed to work. I said, I've come prepared with some things that I'd like to talk with you about, Holy Father, but I don't want to presume that you might have some things to say to me, you know. And he just said, oh, no, you go ahead with what you brought here to talk about. And then he just listened. I mean, yes, there was times he would react or intervene or say something more towards the end of the conversation where it got more kind of conversational. But he just let me speak. And, I spoke about, after the generalities of introducing myself and saying some things how encouraged I was, by the beginning thus far of his pontificate, I basically shared with him the sort of the state of things in the Pacific Northwest, and particularly in the Archdiocese of Portland. I just gave him a kind of an overview of the culture here in Western Oregon, what it's like here, what the culture is like, what the ideology is like, talking about the secularism, the unchurched nature of this part of the country, how small a percentage Catholics are in this archdiocese. And so talked about a lot of the challenges that we face here in the work of evangelization, in trying to evangelize this culture. Then I talked about our pastoral initiatives here and our pastoral plans here, and what we're doing, to address the challenges of evangelization here in the Pacific Northwest. So I talked about our pastoral plan, our priorities here for the Archdiocese. I talked about our presbyterate and trying to pour into and unite our presbyterate and for the sake of the mission, renewing and helping our priests fulfill their mission. Talked about Catholic education and the importance of Catholic education, but mission-passionate Catholic education that sees its primary goal as evangelization and trying to make our schools affordable. I talked about our trying to renew our parishes in the work of evangelization and trying to create a culture of evangelization in our parishes so that each parish sees itself as essentially evangelizing and to go out and make disciples, not just to be enclosed and comfortable in our little community. And then I talked about the poor and our need to take care of and serve the poor. And I told him how much I appreciated and was moved actually and challenged by his apostolic exhortation, De Lexite, where he talks about the Church's preferential option for the poor. And how moved I've been by that to actually add that as a fourth pillar, if you will, of renewal here in the Archdiocese, and talk to him about how I've especially sort of challenged our deacons and will continue to do so to take up that charge, if you will, to lead the ministry to the poor among us. Then I talked a little bit about the Bishops' Conference here in the United States, just to try, I've been a member of the Bishops' Conference for 20 years, so I just wanted him to get my perspective on the sort of the dynamics of our Bishops' Conference to help him understand that better. Because, even though he was a bishop before he obviously became the cardinal and then pope, he served as a bishop in Peru, so he wasn't a part of the Bishops' Conference here in the United States. So I wanted him to have a good understanding of sort of the dynamics and the culture of our Bishops' Conference here. I didn't have the heart to tell him I was a Green Bay Packer fan.
That's probably wise.
Yeah, I did. That could have ended the audience a little bit early.
Did you tell him about our fantastic seminary?
I did. After I shared with him about the challenges that we face here and our initiatives then and our plan how to address this, I told him, I said, it's bearing fruit.
Yeah.
And I shared with him that over the last few years, I told him, and he was quite taken aback by these numbers.
Oh, really? That's incredible.
A few years ago we had 700 people go through the OCIA, coming into the church at Easter through the rites of election. That's how we gauge these numbers. So a few years ago we had 700 enter the church at Easter. And that's not all of the people that enter, because not everybody makes it to the rite of election.
Sure.
But at least those that got to the rite of election. 700 a few years ago. Then the next year it was 1,000 entering the church at Easter. Last year it was 1,200 entering the church at Easter. And I've been hearing anecdotally from pastors that the numbers are way up this year. This year, 1,600
That's incredible. Yeah,
people.
That's so cool.
So just in a few short years, we've gone from 700 to 1,600 people coming into the church. And I told him, I said, something is happening. Maybe it's because people in this part of the country have lived with the darkness, if you will, so long that they're more open to God. Because most of these people, the majority of these people are not baptized.
Yeah.
They're not Protestants becoming Catholics.
Right.
Many of these people have no religious background at all, but they're finding Jesus, and they're finding him in the church. And this is so exciting. And I did share with him the numbers of I said, if not 40, close to 40, Holy Father, in the fall. And he was very pleasantly surprised by that number for us. Yeah. This archdiocese is not that big compared to some of the big boys, if you will.
Right, yeah, absolutely.
L.A., Chicago, New York, Boston, Washington, D.C. Those numbers are very good for us. And per capita, we're doing very, very well.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing so much about that visit, because I know as soon as we see these pictures on social media of you standing next to the Holy Father, Pope Leo, everybody kind of gets excited, and I know we're all kind of curious about it and everything. And so it was good. I'm glad I was just even nearby, within the span of a couple of days.
Well, you did get to shake the hand that shook
That's
the
true.
Pope's hand,
I
right?
did. That's very true. Yeah.